Culinary Treasure Podcast. I'm Steven Shomler, your host. They say that a blind squirrel can find a nut every once in a while, and man, I feel like that blind squirrel. I am such a lucky dog. I cannot tell you how happy I am. I am here at the brand new tasting room for Erath, an incredible winery. It's just phenomenal. And sitting across from me is the winemaker. You've been the winemaker since 2003, Gary Horner. It's an honor and a delight to have you on the podcast.
Well, I got to tell you, it's an honor to be here. I just love talking about Erath.
I do too. It's pretty darn good wine.
Well, thank you. That's always good to hear.
All right. Questions to ask everybody in all my podcasts. Where were you born?
I was born in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Oh, I like that. Minnesota's near and dear to my heart. And if I remember, you weren't there very long, were you?
Not long, maybe 3 months. My dad was with Boeing, and we moved around an awful lot.
Okay, and where'd you go to high school?
I went to Newport High, and that's in Bellevue, Washington.
And what was the mascot there?
The Knights.
The Knights.
The Knights, Knight. Go Knights.
And usually, I don't really, because it really, I think, informs your journey and your story in an incredible way. After high school, you went to UW, Washington.
That's right.
Huskies. You probably don't like the Cougars.
No, we don't talk about that.
The good old Palouse. And you were majoring in pharmacy.
That's right.
So why in the heck did you major in pharmacy at UW? Where did that journey begin?
Well, that journey actually began when I was 10 years old, of all places. I'm the only 10-year-old at that time that wanted to be an anesthesiologist at 10. What? What does that mean about a kid?
How did that happen?
I was fond of reading Reader's Digest. I don't know if that's still around or not, but then my mom would get it, and I would flip through it, and I would always stop and read news from the world of medicine, and I was blown away by that and somehow interested. And then thought, man, this anesthesiology, drugs, the effect on the body, that's kind of cool.
And so you decided to go for it?
Sort of. By the time I got into college, I was in community college for a while trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life. I was taking PE classes, right? Just kind of ditzing around. And I had heard about a pharmacy program at the UW, and I went to interview, and then it just clicked in my head. Here is something, what I was looking for. Drugs. Well, not drugs, you know what I mean?
Yep.
The effect on the body, and here's an opportunity to do that. And my grades weren't good enough to get into medical school. I'll tell you that right now. But I got into pharmacy school and just absolutely loved it. And then went on to graduate school in Philadelphia to get my doctorate in clinical pharmacy.
Do you like science?
I love science.
Were you good in high school at science?
Yeah, I just love it. I can still remember my physics teacher's name, Jan Reeder, turned my life around and made stuff make sense.
Oh, well, bless you. I struggled with science. I remember the periodic table of elements. I thought it was funny. I thought I erased it good enough, but, I wrote urine and erased it.
Of course.
I got in trouble, and I could not, to me, none of that made any sense. Protons, neutrons, morons. I loved history. I love social studies because of all the stories. I love storytelling.
Oh, yes, that makes sense.
Okay, so something magical happened. You love science. I think it's really important that people understand that because I think that kind of informs your future journey. But you're in school at University of Washington, and that's kind of where your wine journey actually began. Because wine really wasn't a big part of your journey up until that point.
Oh, no, it wasn't. I got to tell you, if there was a bottle of wine on the table, it had to be a special occasion growing up. It would be something like Matus Rosé in a crock bottle or something. So my mom and dad were more martini folks and beer. So when I started my education at the University of Washington, I ran across this guy. His name's Andre. He's a single guy out of the Navy, and I soon found out that he had pretty enormous wine cellar.
And he's also a student in the pharmacy
That's
program.
right. We're side by side, same year and everything. We became friends. And one day Andre said, Gary, there's something that I'm into that you might be interested in. That's wine. And I thought, why not? It's wine. It's alcohol. It's a delivery mechanism for alcohol. Let's do it. And the deal that we struck up is Andre said, I'm going to start your wine education, but you have to make dinner. And I got to tell you, I am no cook. These are like really rudimentary college dinners that I'd make for Andre. And he would bring a wine over and then just talk about it. And, you know, we'd try it. And he'd teach me and tell me, you know, you might notice this about this wine and that about that wine. And, of course, I noticed nothing about the wine. It didn't seem actually very good at all. But I got to tell you, what he did, I didn't know labels. I didn't know regions. Andre was bringing over benchmark wines from around the world. I'm talking benchmark wines. He started me at the very top, and I didn't even know it was the very top until later. There was a point in time that I just became absolutely fascinated about the world of wine. I knew nothing, and just started going nuts trying to learn everything I could.
So while you're in pharmacy school, you start just bugging winemakers?
Yeah. And I think some of them, they referred to us as grape nuts, those who are so excited and they know nothing, but they're excited and they're passionate. And that was me. I actually started making wine in my garage at home. While I was at the UW. I got the catalog of names of all the Washington State wine grape growers and started paging through it and calling these people up and asking them, will you sell me 500 pounds of grapes? And they're just thinking, no way, that's stupid. You know, we sell tons of grapes. 500 pounds is nothing. Go away, kid. Well, I finally found a guy. His name is Rob Andrews, and he had a vineyard, still does, up in the Horse Heaven Hills, just outside of Prosser. And Rob said, sure, come on over. I've got some Cabernet. It's getting ready, almost there. You can come and pick it. So I drove my Mazda B2000 over there with a canopy on it, right? I sat in his vineyard by myself and picked 500 pounds of grapes into bins that he actually loaned me. And I went back to my garage and made the wine.
So the first wine you ever made, because you just fell in love with the idea of making wine, you picked your own grapes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Picked my own grapes, cut my own hands with the cutting shears while I was picking grapes, so I got bloody. And then went home, made the wine, and I'm just such a techno geek. I had all these just elaborate mechanisms I put together to make 500 pounds. And well, I was kind of... Well, I don't want to say it was stupid, but it was sure expensive for 500 pounds. And then I screwed the wine up totally.
What was that first wine?
It was Cabernet Sauvignon, and I think it was the 85 vintage. But I just totally blew it. But that was a learning experience.
That was a learning experience. But here's what's fascinating. It didn't deter you at all.
No, it just made me want to try harder.
So that was 85. And 87, you're off into the world of wine.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I was in pharmacy practice for a number of years, and I was good at it, and the pay was good, but it just didn't really fill me up.
You weren't fulfilled?
I wasn't. No, I wasn't.
Did you look forward to going to work?
No, unfortunately not. The only reason I kind of looked forward to going to work is I would go to work on a Kawasaki 900, so that was the part of the workday that I really enjoyed.
So two things I think propelled you from 85 making your first wine to 87 you're going for it into the wine world. One is you, if I understand correctly, not fulfilled, just the pharmacy work may be great for some, but it just wasn't for you. I speculate not only the pharmacy work, but the corporate life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing is you love Pinot.
Hell yeah.
You lucky enough to live in Oregon and work in Oregon where we have amazing Pinot. But way back in the day, there was one special wine that you're having these monthly dinners with your friend Andre. Now we're going back in time when you're in school at University of Washington, and you fell in love. Talk to me about that journey. One day, Andre brought that one wine that finally pierced the veil for you.
Well, Andre had a method to this whole educational process, and as it turns out, and this was a very wise move, I think, is he saved Pinot for last. And he brought this bottle over, and it was a red Burgundy, and I don't remember the producer's name, but I do remember part of the story. Andre says, well, this was acquired at an auction from a dead German doctor's cellar. I just went, wow, what a story. And the vintage was 1953. I remember that because I was born in 54. So Andre gets ready to open this bottle, and he starts pulling the cork and then stops and looks at me, and he says, now, Gary, there's something you need to understand. This wine, I'm going to pour it for you. And in 20 to 30 minutes, this wine is going to dry up and be dead. I went, this makes no sense to me. I'll go with it. And so he pulls a cork, and he pours me that first sample, and it's like amber brownish liquid in a glass. And I think, okay, this is a test. This is a test. And then
You thought he poured you some junk.
Exactly, intentionally. Yeah, seriously.
Because it was ugly in the glass, right?
It was gross and disgusting looking. It looked like badly oxidized Chardonnay, you know. And then I brought the glass to my nose, and I smelled it, and I was just literally blown away by these. There was still like violet essence, forest floor truffles. It was a very powerful, satisfying aroma. And I went, how can something that looks like that smell like that? And then I took that first taste, and it was just like velvet, soft, mouth-filling, wonderful. And then I went, yeah, okay. This is something special going on. I have got to learn how to do that. And then Andre is right. In about 30 or 40 minutes, that wine had gone from luscious, aromatic, soft, and supple to just totally dried up and dead. That was the end of its life.
Now, you had mentioned that already that once you finished your time at University of Washington, eventually you went to Pennsylvania, right? Philadelphia?
Yeah, I was in graduate school in clinical pharmacy in Philadelphia. That was the 2 hardest, tough years of my life, hard time in Philly.
And you got a doctorate in all that stuff.
That's right.
So you had a very successful career. You were in management, Virginia Mason, right? Pharmacy management.
Eventually, after 10 years, they kind of kept pushing me up, and I didn't want to do that, but the pay was good.
But at the same time, you're not fulfilled. On the side, you're pursuing wine this whole time. How to make it, how to do it, how to drink, how to enjoy it. Probably just like a crazy man, because it's a way to put your passion because you're satisfied at work.
Totally.
You even did things like you would take the train from Seattle, right? If I'm right, from Seattle to where? Tell me about those crazy train trips.
I would take train trips down to the University of Davis in California, which is kind of like the winemaking school in the universe. Well, I guess Germany would argue that point. Just so I could learn maybe something special about winemaking that I couldn't learn up in Seattle. Literally, they would be weekend short courses. And I don't know, it was probably a good 13-hour trip down to Davis, and then 13 hours back just to learn one thing.
You were that passionate about it.
Oh, man, I got to tell you, it was nuts.
Okay, so early summer, roughly, 1987, you get in the car and you take a fateful, life-changing trip. You drive all the way back down to UC Davis. Tell me about the trip, and why did you head down to UC Davis? What was the motivation to go down there?
Well, the motivation to go down there are a couple of motivations. One was I thought, how do I get into winemaking, number one? And that's why I made appointments at Davis, because I wanted to sit down and talk to professors, because, after all, they were the wine school, if you want to call it that. And the other part of the mission was I wanted to talk to winemakers who had been around for quite some time. And I lined a couple visits up with these guys. One was the original winemaker for Hanzel in Sonoma, Bob Sessions. And these are people that were just horrendously famous at the time and still are, but Bob's dead. And they opened their doors to this guy who was just like nuts about learning this stuff. and brought me in. I can't remember. Bob shows me around Hansel, and it's just a regular guy, you know, and didn't hold anything back. You know, this is not easy, this whole wine thing. And then Tom Dellinger from Dellinger Cellars, same thing. Tom said, come on down, and took me out in the vineyards. I spent probably 3 hours there. And those were experiences that showed me passion. And these guys are really good at what they did. And the end part, or the middle part of this trip, was to actually go and sit down with the professors at Davis.
But those two stops, I think, really just totally affirmed to you that you're on the right path, saying, I'm going to become a winemaker, because everything they said and did, the experience, just those 3 hours in the winery, like you mentioned, it moved you.
Oh,
It spoke to you, right?
Oh man, really. It was not just the people, but it was being in their vineyards and being in these cellars. It was like magic for me. It had that feeling that I didn't get at my other job as a pharmacist. It was just something felt right.
Yeah, I help a lot of content creators these days, particularly people maybe that are older and realize they need to, there's something they have to express, and they have that calling. And I found it with chefs, brewers, winemakers. There's that winemaker's calling where you're like, this is it. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh, yeah, totally. I'd gone nuts and was just trying to find a way.
Okay, so that same trip, you go to UC Davis and you meet with some of the staff down there, the professors down there at the program.
Yeah, exactly. And they were just fabulous people. But the final interview was with the chairman of the department.
Because you're thinking of going to school there to become a winemaker.
I just wanted to know, what path do I need to take to do that? And that seemed logical. And so I sit down, last appointment, with the chairman of the department, famous guy, also a dead guy now, Ralph Kuhnke. And Ralph says, Gary, we'd love to have you as part of this program to do research. Okay, but I want to learn this whole passion, this thing. I just got to learn this winemaking thing. And Ralph looks at me and he said, now, Gary, really, anybody can teach you how to press the on-off button on a pump. It was at that point in time I knew exactly where I shouldn't be. I needed the experience. I needed to learn everything that you can't read in a book, you can't learn in a lab, that you have to experience side by side with somebody who really does it and is also a wonderful and patient teacher. I just knew I needed to find that to make my path complete.
And part of the reason for that is you have an aptitude toward it, but also you love chemistry, you love science, you're mechanically gifted and inclined. Everything to your career told you that, so you didn't need that kind of the book learning side of it. You needed actually in the field, in the cellar, in the vineyard during the crush side of it. Am I right?
Oh, exactly.
Okay, so same trip. You leave Davis, you're driving back north, headed home, and what, you think of Barney?
Yeah. So I'm back just across the Oregon border, and I had heard of this guy, Barney Watson. He was ran the enology program at OSU. Barney also had a winery, Tyee Winery, and I knew it was just outside of Salem or Eugene or something. You remember, we didn't have cell phones and apps and all that kind of stuff. This was basically driving by map. And I thought, hey, it's a Saturday. I'm just going to show up and see. And I do. I show up, and Barney's Winery was
no cell phones. You just pull off the freeway and go to his
seriously,
place.
No announcement. I'm just going to stop by to see what happens. And so I pull up. Barney's Winery was in a very, very old barn. It was a homestead for a number of years, and then they started growing grapes and making wine. So I drive up the gravel road, and right in front of me is the barn. Barn doors open, and you can see Barney inside, topping barrels. Barney has this enormous handlebar mustache, can't miss it. And just like my experience in California, he goes, "Oh yeah, come on in. Let's talk about stuff." And we did. Wonderful man, very warm and welcoming. And then he said, if you're headed back to Seattle and you've got the time, why don't you stop by Bethel Heights up in Salem and talk to Terry Castile? And I thought, why not? Right? I have nothing to do except drive. And so I did exactly that. I showed up at Bethel Heights, and it was probably around 11 in the morning.
That's just a few hours later. You just kept going.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, totally. And I remember the day. It was just a bright and sunny morning. And so I opened the door at Bethel Heights to the tasting room, trying to see if anybody's there. And inside is Terry. And he's like counting out the cash drawer to open another day in the tasting room, right? And so I tell him my story and how excited and how much I want to learn and maybe come to Oregon and get involved. And he says, well, Gary, I don't have anything right now, but stay in touch.
And this is the early summer 87.
Yeah.
And you did stay in touch.
I did.
And then July of 88, what happened?
Well, I had made the decision. I was still young enough and didn't have children that I could take a chance. And Terry actually did have a part-time position on his bottling line. I quit my job as a pharmacist and went to work for Terry for $6 an hour part-time on the bottling line. My mom and dad almost disowned me because they paid for my education. They were, what are you doing? But they eventually got it when they saw how happy I was.
And you also, $6 an hour part-time is not really enough to survive. And so you thought maybe you might augment your income. And what did you do?
Well, I figured I could be a pharmacist just to sort of support myself, right? And then continue to do this wine thing. And so I was hired as a clinical pharmacist at the hospital in Salem. And I spent 3 days there. And I couldn't do it. I was selling my soul. And I resigned after 3 days.
Because you'd already left that, and to go back to it felt like death.
It did. Exactly. It felt like it was going to be ultimately what controlled my life, just so I could do this little side passion. And I wanted the passion full time.
Yeah, as a quote, I like, put your hand to the plow and don't look back.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
And the other thing I teach people is don't look back unless that's the direction you want to go.
Ooh. Perfect.
And you just had to continue on with wine. Okay, so you're on the bottling line, and did you get to work? Did you get to work Crush that year?
Well, yeah. So bottling finishes, and Terry says, "Hey, we've got harvests coming up. You can stay and do that." And I went, "Oh, yeah, I'll do that."
And what was your job title or work were you doing during harvest?
Oh, you didn't really have a title. It was kind of a small winery. You were basically, we call them cellar rats, but that's not really not a good term, because you did everything, and you worked hard. And it was working hard, and you were tired, but you just so loved it. It was awesome.
Okay. And then you got to do Crush.
Yep. Got to do Crush. And, that eventually comes to an end, towards the end of October. You get the wine and barrel, and then it gets kind of quiet. And Terry's twin brother, Ted, operated the vineyard. And Ted has said, hey, you're done in the winery. I could use you in the vineyard.
So Terry's teaching you winemaking.
Yeah.
In the winery.
Yeah.
And Ted starts teaching you vineyard.
Yeah. It's like, what? And it was, I got to tell you that those two and their spouses were so patient with me, because I was just like, oh, I'm all excited, and I thought I knew everything about chemistry and winemaking. It's just going to be a breeze. And then the day came where it was abundantly clear to me I didn't know. And I was really quite depressed about that. And there was a point, I think there was a point where I really doubted my decision. But Terry and Ted kept presenting me with opportunities and patience. And it started to all come together. Now,
and you got what you wanted. You wanted someone that would walk alongside you and teach you the things you can't learn in a book. And you got it not only in the winery, but you got it in the vineyard as well.
Exactly. These weren't folks that were saying, go do your job. Don't bother me, just do your job. Total opposite. Warm, loving families. And it was pretty grisly work. I got to tell you, I pruned in the vineyard for 3 years. And you want to be in a vineyard in February in the rain, pruning, and it's 35 degrees. you got to really want to do it.
And how fast were you your first time pruning down the line?
Oh, it's pitiful. The rest of the crew, these guys have been doing it almost their whole entire adult lives. So you start and you're pruning down a row. Everybody has a row. And I'm kind of going along thinking I'm doing great. And these guys are just mojoing through it. And it was humorous. And they were so kind. They would turn around and one of them would start pruning up the row that I hadn't finished yet as the others moved on to more rows. And that's kind of how it went. But
did you ever get faster?
No. Well, a little, but you could never keep up with these guys. It was amazing.
So that's a really incredible formative experience. So 92, you start out. The 87, you head down, take this incredible road trip, life-changing road trip. 88, a year later, you get a job at a winery. 5 years later from 87, 92, you get your first job as a winemaker.
Yeah, there was a position that opened up not far from Bethel Heights at a winery called Witnessry. And they were about maybe 3,000 cases. So my job was winemaker and also to manage a vineyard.
How did that feel? Because finally, if you'd had a business card, it could have said winemaker on it. You finally arrived at the job you wanted. It probably wanted longer than you even realized. What did that feel like?
A little scary, but you had the confidence that you could do it, you know? But you were on your own.
Were you excited?
Oh, man. I was crazy excited. And I still had my friends at Bethel Heights. And if I got in a pinch in the vineyard, I'd say, Ted, can you come over and I just got to show you something. And do the same with Terry.
What a gift.
Oh, yeah. They're like 3 minutes away. So,
and how long were you there?
I was there from 92 to 95.
95. So 3 years. Mm-hmm. And then eventually it got sold to some naughty people from California, and they got rid of you. They want to bring their own winemaker from California.
Yeah, and so without any warning, one day they drove up the road and they said, we're done. And I had a 3-month-old daughter, and my son was 2.
Wow. That must have been a tough part in the journey. Like, what have I done?
Yeah, it's like, where do I go?
All right, so we're going to skip a little bit in the story because I'm really excited about your time at Erath. So 2003 is when you end up working at Erath. But tell me do you remember the very first time you met Dick Erath?
Oh, yeah, for sure. My very first vintage at Bethel Heights in 88, it's very customary to have some type of celebration after harvest. And so Terry would have one on their deck in the middle of the vineyard. And he'd invite all the locals, all the winery folk. And I'd never seen Dick Erath. I hadn't met him. And I was standing on the deck up against on the rail, beautiful fall day. And this guy saunters on up to me and says, I don't believe we've met. I'm Dick Erath. And I'm just going, what? Wow. And Dick's a tall guy. I'm 5'2". He's got to be, I'm 6'2". He's got to be 6'4". And I'm shaking hands with a legend, right? Yeah. So that was the first time I met him.
That's incredible. Okay. So where were you just prior to 2003? Where were you working?
Prior to that, I was a winemaker for 5 years at Benton Lane Winery down in the Eugene area.
And through that whole time, from 88 through to 2003, you kept in touch with Dick. And Benton Lane is located down in the Eugene area.
That's right.
And your journey, from had taken you all over, but you really wanted to be in the Willamette Valley.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a heart's desire for you. You love Oregon, but you wanted to get to the Willamette Valley.
Totally.
So you're down in Eugene, you're at Benton Lane, you'd kept in touch with Dick, and out of the blue, he reaches out to you.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. When I got to Benton Lane, I always was kind of a techno-geeky guy, and I had been researching some techniques that had been employed in other wine regions in the world and some other techniques that were not at all employed in the wine industry, and started experimenting with different ways of wine aging and also different ways to manage the red wine cap during fermentation. And it became very successful, and Dick caught wind of that. And he is also a techno-geeky guy, right? And we would cross paths every now and then at functions, and I just so desperately wanted to get up to the Dundee Hills. And nothing against the winemaking down in Eugene, absolutely nothing. But I wanted to get up to really what was, and still is, in my opinion, the center of the Pinot universe.
And you absolutely love Pinot.
Oh, this is amazing. When you stop and think, and this is so true, they call it the heartbreak grape because, grapes will grow anywhere, really. They're sort of like weeds. They'll grow, but will they ripen fruit to perfection? And Pinot Noir, thin-skinned variety, very prone to disease. It really is. And I thought, well, this can't be true. It really is the hardest red grape to go because you have to match the climate precisely, and you have to not screw it up. It is very, very delicate. And that was a challenge.
And you love those kind of challenges.
Oh, God, yes.
Okay, so Dick shows up out of the blue.
Yeah, he shows up out of the blue down at Benton Lane. And we had a little chat, and he made it very clear that he was interested in what I was doing. And Dick was always, well, he should be if you're in business, want to make money. And he saw that me coming up and working for him was going to supplement his income for sure. And he made that kind of that offer you just couldn't refuse, opportunity to go to work at a legendary winery in the Dundee Hills with Dick. So
what would your job title have been?
Winemaker.
So he's offering you to come be the winemaker.
Yeah.
At Erath in the Dundee Hills, and you can make Pinot.
Right.
And what did you say?
Well, Dick, love him. He got to where he was by being very frugal. And up until that time, he wasn't really ready to give up the title of winemaker. People would be winemaker, but they were always like associate winemaker, and Dick was winemaker. And so I told Dick, I said, really what I want is I want to be the sole winemaker. And I would prefer it if you step away. It's not that I don't want to see you, but I want to do this thing. And you need to make some improvements to this winery. So I want you to open your checkbook.
Where I just visiting with you, I just know in the core of my gut you said that with kindness and respect.
Oh, absolutely.
But regardless of the kindness and respect, that is incredibly bold to tell Dick Erath, you need to step aside as winemaker if you want me to come work for you. I'm going to be the winemaker. If you're going to hire me I really want to do it. And you need to fix some things up around here. Where did that come from? Most people would have never said that and maybe run into troubles later because of it. But where did that come from?
And I don't know. I absolutely don't know. It's one of those moments, Dick, again, love the man. It was really, I want to say maybe a micromanager. Okay? I didn't want to do that, but I so desperately wanted to be in the Dundee Hills. I saw the opportunity. So why not? I had nothing to lose. I mean, I had a good job at Benton Lane, I really did, but why not? Why not ask for what you want?
Well, my friend Kevin Brissett, dear friend of mine, he says if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yes, correct.
And so many people don't ask for what they want. And cheers to you for having the internal fortitude to kindly and respectfully, but still the undertone boldly ask for what you want. I celebrate that. That's incredible.
Oh yeah, it sure worked out. It's been a dream.
Okay, so it's 2020 now. You've been there 17 years. Is what, your 17th crush?
It's my 17th crush with Erath, and I think it's my 32nd professional crush down here in Oregon.
Let's see. So this is 2020, and 3 years will be 2023. You got to have one heck of a party to celebrate 20 years at Erath in 2023. That's my recommendation, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Well, deal. You're invited.
I will be there. That would be phenomenal. So talk to me about you really had success in the pharmacy world, and you weren't fulfilled. Tell me about your fulfillment now as a winemaker.
There are tough times. I mean, let's just face it. In life, there are tough times. But every day I wake up, I want to go to Erath. I want to make the wines better. I want to be with people that share that same that same passion. And in the off season, if there actually is an off season these days, they like to get me on the road to do some marketing and sales support. There is nothing more rewarding to say, let's just say you're in Manhattan and you're doing a wine pouring in a wine shop, and somebody walks up to you and they said, Erath, that was the first Oregon Pinot I ever had. Or they walk up to you and they say, Erath, God, I can always count on that being a good bottle of wine. And here it is. That just is wow for me. That's an emotional experience for me. Wow.
So we've talked a lot about the science. That's an aptitude you have. But I think that making wine, and maybe you can speak to this, is both a science and an art. And your passion, there are some artists in there somewhere.
Yeah. I would never have thought of myself at a younger age that way. But over the years, it's just amazing. If you don't get all wrapped up and are trying really hard to learn something, and you just maybe just relax a little bit and have faith that stuff's going to come your way, or an understanding's going to come your way. Later on today, when I leave here, I'm going to be going out into vineyards to taste fruit. And I don't want to say that the chemistry doesn't matter. Sure. What's my decision based on? How the vine looks, how the fruit tastes. All these just zillions of little things. I call it the Rolodex in my head. It's been building over these years, and now it just kind of comes out of you. Instead of, worrying about, will I be able to make the right decision? It's confidence. And that confidence was not always there. And now I just feel so at home with it, and I don't want to sound arrogant. I don't know everything. I am comfortable in my shoes.
So if someone's listening to this podcast, and by the way, you don't sound arrogant at all. You're an incredible, amazing winemaker, celebrated, renowned winemaker, and your humility is touching. I very much appreciate that. You have every right to be, wow, look at me, and that's just not your heart.
Not me.
So what if someone's listening to this podcast, and you were probably late 20s, early 30s when you made the leap?
Yes, early 30s.
Yeah. And if someone's listening to this podcast and they're maybe, it's someone that's in high school, wants to be a winemaker, and they go to school for it, that's maybe a different journey. But if someone's a little bit older and they say, that's it, I want to go for it, I don't like the corporate life I have, and I'm going to become a winemaker, what advice do you have for them?
My advice is talk to people. Do what I did, call people up. They may not want to talk to you. But talk to people and learn what it is that makes them excited, or even if they are excited. That's where you got to start. And you actually, to me, people can graduate from Davis or other schools and go to work, and be a winemaker or an enologist or what have you, and that's all fine and good. To me, I had to start at the bottom. I needed to learn everything about this from the ground up. So if you're prepared to do that, that's great. That doesn't have to be your path, but there are plenty of people you can sit down with and have the conversation.
So February 89, you're pruning vineyards, right? Your first time really pruning, right?
Yeah.
And that experience is going to inform today when you go to taste fruit.
Oh, absolutely. You look at a vine. When I was pruning, and a lot of times I'd be out there by myself in the rain, and it would be 35, and you're just thinking, wow, this is tough. But the way I approached every vine is I would stand in front of it, and I would look at it, and though I didn't vocalize these words, what I was intending to get back from that vine is, tell me where you want me to cut. And that sounds like kind of crazy, but I would look at it.
No, that sounds dead on correct.
And feel like, okay, now I know where.
Yep.
So that stuff, that's that stuff sticks with you, and it's still there with me today. And I got a great guy that helps. I don't want to say helps. He directs all what happens in our vineyards. And man, if I didn't have him, I'd be nuts. So I can't get out and do everything, and I rely upon experts. And his name is Ryan McAdams. He's got the passion I have. He's got it for viticulture. Amazing guy.
Well, maybe we might have to have a podcast on. I love a great story. I love a great story. Okay, let's. You guys make a lot of amazing wines at Erath. Wonderful, wonderful wines, and people can they can head out to the winery, or they can come right down here if they're in the Portland area and come to this beautiful tasting room. We'll talk about two of them. You've got a Pinot Noir rosé. And my wife, her dad was a winemaker. A wonderful guy. May he rest in peace. And so she grew up, around wine and wineries. And her favorite wine is a rosé. And sometimes it gets overlooked. So talk to me about your rosé.
Well, first of all, our rosé is 100% Pinot Noir rosé, and there's a couple ways you can make rosé. You can actually, with a red wine fermentation, when you load the tank with grapes, actually bleed off some juice that will look like rosé. That's called Saignée, bleeding. But we don't do that. We actually take the grapes and press them. So the color that you see in the bottle there, that kind of salmon pink, copperish color, that's all natural.
It's just a beautiful color.
Oh, it's drop dead gorgeous. And the thing about Pinot Noir rosé, at least as far as I'm concerned, I love other rosés, but Pinot Noir is just, or at least the way we make it, so it's almost floral. You close your eyes and you smell it, and it's almost like a white wine bouquet. There's citrus in there. There's peach, kind of white peach aromas. It's just so intriguing.
The nose is incredible.
Isn't that fun?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I love it. I really do. I get to make wines that I like to drink. Nobody tells me how to make wine. I know the people that own us and stuff, they don't. Just keep doing what you're doing. So what I love about that rosé is it's actually not sweet. And it used to be a lot of times you'd run into sweetness. Nothing bad about sweetness, because you need to match a wine to somebody's personal likings.
Yep.
But my personal liking is for a dry wine. So this is totally dry, very round and soft and aromatic. It's just so pretty. My wife and I, a lot of times we'll be cooking at home. We'll have a rosé as kind of the pre-dinner.
While you're cooking?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, that's brilliant.
Oh, yeah, it's like a warm-up.
Yes, it's just great. Anything else? Someone that maybe is not, lots of people know wine, they know rosé, but someone's new to rosé or new to wine, what would you recommend? They pick up a bottle of this wonderful Erath Pinot Noir rosé. What should they do with it? Someone that's doesn't really know.
Well, I think people can get hung up about wine and food pairings, and that can become somewhat intimidating. And I think for some people that alters their experience with wine. They're trying, oh gosh, I got to have this with this, I got to have it with that. Well, have wines that you like with foods like with foods you like. Okay, try that. Try that on for size. Have this wine by itself. Just sip it. Explore. I always tell people explore. If you got to match this with something, it's great at the holidays. Holiday food, turkey, ham, all that kind of stuff. But just with any lighter pasta dish, lighter cheeses, that's great. But play around.
And I don't want to break the rules or be irreverent, but I actually love rosé with just my wife makes some lemony fennel potato salad that's incredible, and a little bit of watermelon, and then maybe a little bit of grilled chicken, and a rosé. To me, that's just all those flavors work for me.
Oh wow, home run right there! I'm salivating. And watermelon, a lot of times early on in the bottle aging process, I get watermelon out of one of the elements in our rosé.
Okay, I wish we could drink like 9 of your wines and spend all day doing it. It's phenomenal.
We do nothing afterwards.
Yeah, but we only have time for one more. And so world famous Pinot Noir, Erath Pinot Noir. I have goosebumps because I'm sitting with Gary Horner, the winemaker at Erath, drinking a Pinot Noir on a beautiful August day at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I love my life.
Yeah,
okay,
me
so
too.
talk to me about this wine.
Well, this is what we call the Oregon Pinot Noir. So it's Pinot Noir that is sourced from a number of vineyards. And so it's really reflecting what Oregon is. And so my mission there, which was Dick's in the beginning, is we wanted to make a Pinot Noir that, A, was approachable. And by that, I mean, a little softer and not aggressive, acidic or tannic, just soft and pleasant, very fruity and inviting. Okay. And also at an affordable price. I mean, that had to be part of the formula. And for me, as you'll notice, there are more than one gray hair on this head.
Just a few.
Just a few. And this is the wine that I sweat the most because this wine is distributed everywhere in this country and also internationally. So everybody sees it. So you make a blender here.
The world's going to know.
The world's going to know. And this is the wine that keeps the doors open at the winery and allows me to do all these single vineyards wines and all this other kind of stuff. I don't want to make it sound like a single vineyard is easy, but man, make the volume that we make in this wine and make it great. Gray hairs you'll get.
All right. I'll taste it. You tell us what we're tasting. The nose, I just have to say, the nose is phenomenal.
Isn't that lovely? The nose is, it's really about more red fruits, like cherry. There's some strawberry essence in there. Maybe, some raspberry. But what I notice about this, and what I strive for, actually, in all of our wines, is I like to liken it to, let's say you get on a plane, you're flying to New York when those days come again. What you want is a very smooth takeoff. Okay? And you don't want any turbulence in the middle. There's all this up and down stuff. Like, oh, wow, that's really acidic. Oh, that's really tannic. Oh, I don't want that. I want you to take off easy, gentle flight, and a very smooth landing. So from start to finish, no rough edges, very fruity and soft. We want to attract people into the wide world of Pinot Noir, and we feel this is a great place to start.
It's a great place to start, but it's a great place to finish. This is a world-class Pinot Noir. I'm blessed and I'm lucky in my life. I get to taste lots and lots and lots of wines from all over the world. Just took a wine writer's trip to Greece, which was phenomenal. It was just what an incredible thing. You mentioned the vineyards, and I did a podcast with a winemaker, and when she was 10 years old, her great-grandfather planted the vineyards 98 years ago. And she was 10 years old. She remembers walking through the vineyards, wanting to become a winemaker. And she became a doctor. She moved to Brussels, and a couple years ago, her dad and things changed, and she's been the winemaker now for 5 years. But it was walking through the vineyards that her great-grandfather planted when she was 10 years old that first set that. You mentioned your time in the vineyards. That's just reminding me of that story.
Wow, that's an amazing story.
So I get wine from all over the world. I get wine from all over Oregon, which I think is the best winemaking place in the world. Personally, no offense to everywhere else, but I admit my bias, and this is a world-class Pinot Noir. I just have to tell you.
Hear. Thank you.
Just from my experience, it's incredible. I would encourage everyone to get some, to try it. I know that you winemakers love these special single things they get to do here and there, and I celebrate all of those, but I want people to come try. Man, this is like the tried and true.
Oh yeah, this is Oregon in a glass right there.
It is. I love it. Just phenomenal. All right. Thank you so much, Gary. It's been an honor and a delight to have you on the Culinary Treasure Podcast. I wish you all the best. And, I am not shy. I have that kind of boldness, too. And I do look forward to 2023 and your 20-year celebration. And I would love to be there. I don't care if I have to wait tables or pour water or whatever, but I would be phenomenal to be there.
Oh, you betcha. Love to have you. It's going to be fun.
Wish you all the best. Cheers.
My pleasure. Thank you.